Chapter 22. Escape Attempt. Daniel was still staring out the window when he heard Fate running up the stairs to join him. What Daniel saw when he first reached the top floor was the bear running at full gallop toward the trees. It was chasing something that Daniel couldn't see. "What? What's wrong?" asked Fate, still breathless from his run up the stairs. "I just had a thought. The caloric requirements of an animal that size must be huge. You pulled me out of a comfortable chair because the bear is hungry?" "We knew that already, Daniel," said Fate, exasperated. "No, not just hungry. It's probably always at the edge of starvation." "Good. Maybe he'll die and leave us be." "It means," said Daniel patiently, "that he can't wait for us forever, and we can get away." "Get away?" said Fate incredulously. "Daniel, this is probably the safest place we could find. It's probably the only safe place in this whole jungle." Daniel held up the water skin which the mandrills had given them. "This doesn't hold much. We don't have enough for a long stay, but if we can get to the river, we can refill it." He drank half of the water and held it out for Fate, who hesitated. "I'm more than a little worried about waterborne parasites," he mused as Daniel drank. "Parasites are a possibility," Daniel said after taking a breath. "Dehydration is a certainty." "What does it taste like?" asked Fate with a grimace. "It tastes like muddy river water that's been in a deer's bladder all day," said Daniel seriously. Fate licked his dry lips and took the water. He drank the rest of it, exhaled with a whistle. "Oh, that's the best muddy river water I've ever had." He put the empty skin in Daniel's backpack and zipped it up again. Daniel moved to the other side of the room and pointed out the opposite window at the river in the distance. It looked like creamed coffee poured in a sleepy back-and-forth snake path through the jungle. "It's not that far. When we get back, we can either come back inside the pyramid or see what's down that other road." Fate followed Daniel to the window overlooking the river. He stared out at the green treetops and the winding water. "You know, other than the sunburn and blisters, constant hunger and ever-present mortal danger, this place is really rather nice." After a moment, he drew out his coins and tossed them in the air. The one he caught said, "Go straight." Daniel and Fate slowly returned their gaze to the window, both knowing what it would mean to get caught out there if the bear returned. "All right, best to hurry then," Fate said, and turned toward the stairs, pocketing his coins. Daniel squeezed ahead of him and took the steps two at a time until they got to the last set of stairs, which they knew to be rotten. He cautiously descended. By the time he reached the ground floor, Fate had caught up with him and began his own careful climb down, this time mimicking Daniel and staying away from the center of the steps. Daniel waited for Fate at the open doorway and peered out cautiously. There were deep gouges in the stone floor where the bear had been scratching. He tried not to think about them and ran out the door just as Fate joined him. When they reached the bottom of the stone steps, they turned and headed for the corner of the pyramid. Soon, they were behind the huge structure, facing nothing but the jungle ahead and a narrow, uninviting animal trail leading off into the dark underbrush. "There, that must lead to the river," Daniel declared, and headed for the dirt path. "What makes you so certain, Daniel?" Fate said between panting breaths. "Animals have to drink. There are probably several of these that all lead to the river." The tangle of branches on either side tugged at their clothing as they passed, and they were forced down from a run to a fast walk, then, finally, a painfully slow creep through the dense undergrowth. The ground was clear at their feet, but the path was created by the traffic of much shorter animals. They had to crouch to get through at several places, nearly catching a broken twig in their eyes with every step. When they finally emerged from the densest part, they could hear the turbulent water. Daniel had to stop Fate from just rushing ahead, anxious to get the job done and return to safety. "Stop," Daniel whispered. "Ambush predators like these spots. We need to be very careful. He studied the terrain on each side. The river was directly ahead of them, only a few more yards. It was a gentle, sloping, muddy bank, pockmarked with the footprints of dozens of different animals. Daniel and Fate listened and watched. Nothing stirred. After the span of a full minute, they finally crept toward the water. Still, nothing moved. Daniel lowered the water skin to the surface and began to refill it. "Daniel!" Fate hissed in alarm. Daniel looked up and followed Fate's gaze into the trees beside the bank. It took a moment for him to see it. Among the thick branches was the midnight black form of a large jaguar. Its body was crouched parallel to a dark branch, but its head was turned in their direction. Yellow eyes stared down at them, unblinking. Daniel and Fate froze. The cat slowly turned toward them. As its front paws left the branch, the crocodile, waiting just under the surface of the water, leapt up in a rush of speed, catching the cat in its jaws. Together, they slapped down onto the muddy bank, only yards from Daniel and Fate. The jaguar screamed and struggled, but the crocodile was 4 times its size. It opened its jaws just enough to quickly get a better grip, and the cat went still as it was swallowed in staccato gulps. Fate recovered first and lifted Daniel by his backpack. Daniel hurriedly fastened the opening of the water skin as they ran. With no thought of losing an eye to the twigs and branches, they ran back up the trail and didn't stop until they reached the meadow, scratched and bleeding. From the rear of the pyramid, there was no sign of the bear. They rested a moment and caught their breath, too exhausted and terrified to speak. Once they had recovered, Fate led as they made their way down the left side of the pyramid. "Decision time," said Fate as they approached the corner of the building. "Do we try the other road or retreat back inside?" Before he could get out his coins or Daniel could offer an opinion, they rounded the point of the triangular base of the pyramid and saw the bear. It was at the far end of the meadow, just emerging from the trees. The safety of the door was still over 100 feet away. The bear was 3 times that distance, but once the race started, he closed the gap as quickly as a galloping horse. Daniel and Fate stumbled through the doorway and stopped just out of reach of his paw, clawing at the air through the doorway. The bear retracted his paw and replaced it with his snout to roar at them in frustration. Spots of spittle and the blood of whatever it had just eaten speckled the floor. "Oh, that's foul!" exclaimed Fate. He prodded Daniel toward the stairs. Exhausted, they slowly made their way back up to the 3rd floor and the soft chairs. A quick nap at the end of a long day turned into a deep sleep through the night. Daniel dreamed about his parents and tried to see their faces clearly, but failed. Fate dreamed about women, wine, and comfortable beds.